Well, it's been quite a whirlwind over the past couple weeks, and I feel like with cool season grass, you get to this point, late summer, early fall, where nearly everything has to happen, or at least it feels like that as far as putting down fertilizers, renovations, all the things that need to happen in a very short time frame. So I have been an extremely busy man the last few weeks, and I haven't really had much time to turn on this camera and do a whole lot of stuff just because of an insane amount of things that needed to get done that are hopefully going to set me up for a little bit better season next year of not working 12 to 14 hours a day. But that's how it's been for quite a while now, so hopefully something can change because I'm getting to be a tired person. But I want to recap what I did here, something a little different than I think what most people have done with this green build. Quick recap, I guess, of this whole thing for those of you who are new, or if you haven't been paying attention, just a very quick recap here of how this all came to be. I had a spot here up on this big field that I thought I was going to put a golf green. Ended up having too much slope there, so I figured out that this area down here by my plots actually had a fairly good spot for it. It was already fairly shaped the way that I wanted it to be, but there needed to be some drainage work done so that things actually drained off of the green. Brought in a whole bunch of soil from a different part of our property and moved it down to here to shape all that. Then it was late July and I decided, yeah, I'm gonna plant some ryegrass. The reason that I did that, although not a very ideal time to do it, but I've learned this year that you can get away with a lot of things when you are watching them pretty closely. But I decided to do that because all the soil that I moved was just sitting here bare. If we get any thunderstorms or major things, I was going to have it all wash away. So I decided to put this ryegrass down to hold everything in place. And so this whole area actually looked very, very different about a month ago, and I keep forgetting that. I also had the shipping container over here that got moved earlier in the year. So much stuff that even a few months ago I'm forgetting all that's happened. My original plan was to get that ryegrass down, start mowing it lower just as a temporary sort of green for the rest of the season. So I started cutting that down. I noticed not very even, pretty bumpy on the old side, so I'm gonna have to do sand top dressing. So I put the sand on there, and I noticed really quickly with ryegrass that because it's a bunching type grass, you're not gonna get a lot of side spread out of it. If you need some decent amounts of sand, or you put it on there and you feel like there's some bare areas, well then you're gonna have to overseed. So I was mowing it down one night again to see how everything was after I did the sand top dressing. I quickly noticed that it's gonna need more sand. So I had a thought in my head at that point, what if I left what's there and I put the bentgrass over top and did a bentgrass overseed on the ryegrass. Because I had a lot of space in between all of that, now I felt like I could get the bent to grow in. The ryegrass seems to get thinner and thinner as you do heavier sand top dressing for the reasons that I just mentioned. It doesn't spread sideways, whereas this bentgrass is going to spread all across the top of the ground there and cover everything. So I asked a few friends, and the nice thing about this project too is I have a lot of network of people who work at golf courses or have done their own builds, or just many people who know a lot more about bentgrass. So I asked a few questions. They said, yeah, actually, I don't think that would be a bad idea considering what you have there. Sounded like sometimes out in the desert, sometimes ryegrass is added, maybe a lighter amount than I had, and maybe not as mature as I had when I overseeded the bent, but it's added there to kind of help hold some of that moisture in, get something growing really fast on the surface. So I decided, hey, I might give this a shot. I could have just killed it off, and I could have just sprayed it that same day and seeded the bent in there, but for science purposes, I decided, let's give this a shot and see what happens. So it was recommended on bentgrass to go with a little higher seeding rate if you're gonna do an overseed. So I actually went with 3 pounds per thousand. This green is about 3,400 square feet. It's kind of hard to measure exactly because of the shape of it, but that's roughly about what it is. So I did 3 pounds per thousand on there, and bentgrass seed, extremely tiny. Like if you've seen bluegrass seed before, you know that that's small, but this is nothing compared to that. So I have this hand spreader. I ended up putting it in there, setting it to the lowest setting, and walked over this thing tons of times just to try to get it as even as possible. Then I took more sand and I put a light sand top dressing over top of that seed. So you don't want anything heavy on here because anything that's buried at this point isn't going to grow well. But I wanted something, even though it is sand, over top of that seed if possible, just so that when the moisture hits it, there's something right over top of that seed. You could roll it in if you wanted to, but that's not going to do a whole lot here. It's still going to be sitting pretty much on the surface. So rolling it would be fine, and then putting the sand top dressing on if you wanted to. But that's what I did. And then again, something new this season, I had this irrigation down here, which is essential. Pretty much, I don't think I'd be doing this project very easily if I didn't have that set in place. So I can control it and run it multiple times during the day off of my well. So I kept that thing pretty wet, and within actually 4 days was the germination rate on this. I saw pretty good germination and things started to grow well. Now on sand, there is obviously native soil underneath there, but on the sand, you're going to have to keep up with your fertilizers and supply a lot of different things. On the grow-in itself, there's pretty crazy amount of fertilizer that goes on to try to get this bent grass to really start to spread out and cover this ground.
Well, I got this much left, but can't get the mower to keep running. It goes like 2 passes or so and then dies.
So definitely a frustrating time when equipment doesn't work. It's probably my most frustrating thing aside from irrigation and the fact that I don't have enough at this point to cover all the grass that I have, and that's been driving me nuts. Not a very good mechanic, not something that I am very thrilled about doing either, so I think that plays into it. When you're so busy, you have equipment break down and you just don't really have time to take a look at it and try to fix a bunch of things. I think that leads into it too. Right now I think this thing needs a new carb or some work on that, and so I'm gonna have to figure that out. I'm also planning to get a backup machine. When you're mowing something every other day or pretty close to it, sometimes maybe every day, you really can't be stuck with something that doesn't function, and so having backup systems, I've learned as part of my property and all of the grass that I have to cover, is very essential to things, and so that's gonna be coming too. I'm having some cut issues with that mower yet too, so I have to figure that out. Still noticing that there's quite a bit of leveling work to do. Had I really done this the way that I wanted to, I probably would have killed off everything that was there. Probably would have used my power rake again on the Ventrac to smooth everything out and make it look really nice and butter smooth. I actually have another golf green that will be going in. I don't know yet if I'm seeding it this year. I will be seeding something on this area, but I have that thing completely 100% smooth now. I wish I would have done that down here, but this whole process has just been kind of read and react as you go and not exactly as my original plan was. More top dressing, more sand is gonna really have to go onto this thing, I think, to get it level enough for me to get it down to really low heights that I'm gonna be going as we get going on a more mature stand of bent grass there. But first mow at 0.25, I noticed there's definitely some low spots, there's a few scalp spots. So yesterday I started working on that. And seeing that yesterday was only day 10, I'm very impatient as well, so I keep thinking that this thing should be finished already and I should be playing golf on it, but it was day 10 yesterday. Today, heavy watering went on to it last night, try to work that sand in, and I also put a pound of N on it yesterday to try to push some of this growth, and that's going to be happening about every week now for the next couple weeks to try to get this thing to really accelerate forward on growth and grow in. Quite an interesting process. And I'm learning a lot here while I'm doing this stuff, learning maybe what I should do, what I shouldn't do. Definitely learning some of the things that I would change, but I'll probably do a recap video of all that someday when this thing is hopefully finished and I can go over a better process of what I would have done differently. But I would just say your prep work at the beginning, like any lawn renovation project, is very important. If you don't want to have to do insane amounts of sand top dressing, getting it as smooth as possible before your seed goes down is very important. So very quick look at a couple other things here too. This outside part, I did have some gray leaf spot come in here. I made it through all of that heat of summer when I seeded this in late July with no issue, and then just about a week ago or so, we had a couple day stretch of about 90 with some really hot, humid overnight temps. And this thing was probably all nicely watered and juiced up. I don't water anytime as we go into the evening, but the soil has been staying pretty wet because of what I need to do. And so I think it just hit me there, and I didn't have any fungicide on anything at that point. So this is pretty damaged when it comes to ryegrass. Ryegrass is pretty susceptible to that, and this is pretty damaged in terms of I did put some fungicide on this afterwards, but once you see something like this, you know, that's not going to fill in a ton. So I did an overseed on the outside part of this yesterday. Actually, a slight amount of bluegrass I put into there just because I noticed as we're playing down here probably and things start to get some divots here and there, I would prefer if I had just a slight amount of grass in there that's going to spread. So overseeding creeping bent grass onto ryegrass, has it worked so far? Yes. We're just going to see how it all plays out. I can definitely see on the far left side that there's way more ryegrass, but as I said, every sand top dressing seems to take a little bit more of it away. So as we keep going, we're going to see how it all plays out. So thank you so much for watching today. We'll see you next time.